Welcome to Connections and Conversations, an advocacy arena podcast, working to increase civic engagement and strengthen our communities. Well, hello. I am so happy to have with me two wonderful, amazing women who I happen to be fortunate enough to call friends. But what they do is so essential to what happens in our communities. I want to get our conversation started, first of all, by introducing them and what they do, and we'll just kind of get into the meat of it. I'd like you first to say hello to Lauren. And Lauren, can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
Hi, Miss D. It's so nice to be here with you today and also with our other dear friend that is here. I am truly honored to be with both of you beautiful ladies. I am a social worker. I work professionally as a social worker. Social workers have a code of ethics that we uphold, and I actually work with the National Association of Social Workers. And so the three responsibilities of that are to strengthen and unify the profession, promote the development of social work practice, but also very importantly during these times, advance sound social policies. And so as social workers, we are committed to upholding social justice.
Okay. So now we're going to go to our next friend, and that is Gwen. Gwen, can you tell people what your life work has been involved in?
Well, I went down a path that not many would choose. I started in corporate and ended up in the union movement. I consider myself a labor union activist. I believe that it was something that I was destined for. I worked for the UAW on the president's staff for nearly 20 years, and the experience was one that I will never regret and wouldn't change for the entire world. It was so profoundly important to me, not just because of the fact that my mother and my father and many members of my family are part of the UAW or were part of the UAW. It was also because I wanted to do something that affected greater change,
Mm-hmm.
good change for the most amount of people. How do I do that? I knew I wasn't a politician. This was my way of being able to be a part of that. I continue to support my union family, and I continue to support social justice.
Awesome. I heard you say, Gwen, that you kind of followed in your parents' footsteps. So they were like part of the UAW. Can you tell us a little bit? Because this is airing in February, Black History Month, and we've had many conversations around this. How would you tell people about the significance of the labor movement and civil rights movement, that interconnectedness? Can you kind of give us a little insight into that?
Yeah, I am grateful that my mother had a union job. Prior to going to work for General Motors, she was a scrub tech at U of M. And I don't believe that there was so much of a union there as what she found at the UAW at that time. But both my mother and father are from Mississippi, and my grandfather sent my mother up north to Michigan because he said, they're going to kill you, because she was profoundly strong in her belief of being treated fairly and fighting for what was right and standing on principle. So, regardless of the wonderful work that she was able to do at U of M,
Mm-hmm.
the microbiology lab, in the surgical room, she accepted that this union job provided stability, security, benefits, better pay, definitely better pay at that time. Even now, I'm sure. And also gave her back her opportunity to have a voice, speak loudly with that voice. It was always fortunate for me to be in a family where politics was not something that we didn't talk about. It was something definitely talked about at our dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
Just being on the side of right. being on the side of standing up for people who could not stand up for themselves, or standing up for yourself, which is really important. We advocate for people all the time, but a lot of times we think that advocating for ourselves is a selfish thing, and it really isn't. It is our innate right to stand up for ourselves and demand better. So it was beautiful. It was something that when I had the opportunity to work for the UAW, it was one of her proudest moments. And for me, it was like coming home, because the sense of family, the sense of unity, the sense of community, and the sense of we're all working towards this bigger goal was there. And that was what I felt in my own home growing up.
Awesome. So, Lauren, I know a little bit of your background, but can you just tell us a little bit about what guided you toward social work and a little bit more about what you do in the community in which you live under that umbrella of services?
So, similar to Gwen, I worked in corporate America for many, many years. My undergraduate degree is not in social work, it is in mass communications and public relations. And
Hmm.
then I have what I refer to as my mid career crisis, where I had to decide if I was going to continue to work in corporate America. And when I turned 65, there would be a conference room with my colleagues and a cake, and they would tell me happy retirement, and I would go on my way, right? Or would I go do something else? And I was here since it is Black History Month. Although, of course, we know Black history is,
365.
but one of Dr. Martin Luther King's quotes that motivate me is life's most urgent and persistent question is, what are you doing for others? And so at that time in my mid career crisis, I was looking at other jobs that were working towards advocacy
Mm-hmm.
and empowerment for other people. And I realized that I could use my voice, which was what I had been doing, but instead of it being for the corporation, maybe I could use my voice towards advocating towards others.
Okay.
And so that's when it became put up or shut up time. And I pursued my master's degree in social work. And I've been doing that now for the last 18 years.
Can you tell me a moment in time around something that really resonated with you and let you know, like, this is what I was meant to do, as Gwen has said, like in your social work? Describe something that, you did, an initiative or something that you had a part of that really made you feel like this is where I belong.
I would say that that came several years ago. I was working with an organization that was helping young people that are transitioning out of the foster care system.
Hmm.
So you're talking about teenagers that are going to end up at age 18 be let go with not many safety nets, as we know. And one of the things that was an issue for them was they were not able to get driver's licenses. And not being able to get a driver's license because they are essentially considered in this state, they were considered wards of the state.
Wow.
So even in the foster care system, even if they had kind, wonderful foster parents that wanted to help them get a driver's license, they were not allowed to put them on their insurance because they were still considered a ward of the state. And in my state, the state of North Carolina did not want to take on the liability or the expense of where are we going to put these young people that are in the out of home system onto some type of insurance plan. So this caused a major issue, as you can imagine, because young people would want to be able to drive so that they could go to part-time jobs. Young people would want to be able to drive so that when they turned 18, if they wanted to go to work full time, if they wanted to go to community college, if they had gotten into a full-time college, I mean, all kinds of things, as you know, not having transportation is quite the barrier. And so this organization, the young people went to the General Assembly. They used their own voices. They spoke out in committee meetings. They testified to elected leaders in North Carolina about what a hindrance this was and how much they needed a license. And so eventually policy was changed. And so now young people that are in foster care in North Carolina are able to get a driver's license, and their foster parents, if they want to, are able to put that young person onto insurance. That was a moment where I realized the power of the voice and advocacy can make very real differences in people's lives.
That's awesome. So, Gwen, to you, during your period working for the UAW, and as you said, you worked for the president, is there a moment that stands out for you where you said, this is where I belong? I'm so honored to be able to do what I'm doing, and I know it's making a difference.
I think that the most profound moment for me was early on in my career with the UAW. I had the opportunity to go to Black Lake, and it's our education and convention center where UAW members come to get educated on certain classes. Some is about activism, some is about trade unions, some is about whatever have you. The public is also invited, of course, not at the same time. But this particular event was because it was the president's staff meeting. And so all of the departments that fall under the president's staff go up to Black Lake and they give out a report, and we go into these breakout sessions and kind of get a better understanding of what work is being done in each department and then how our departments help support those departments. So at the time, Jokic was the president, and it was my first one. Very exciting. It's a beautiful, just a beautiful environment, a beautiful atmosphere. And I'm not even talking about the golf course. I'm talking about the center itself. It is gorgeous. I was in a breakout session with the organizing department, which falls under the president of the UAW. And I was in the public relations department, which falls under the president, listening to these organizers talk about how hard they were fighting and how hard the workers were fighting to gain a union in their workplaces, whether it was in the South at these Southern foreign facilities, which we probably shouldn't even call them foreign facilities anymore. They've been so ingrained in our society. And also, you know, the teaching assistants at universities. And it was just hearing how passionate these people were and how much courage it took, because there's a lot of backlash within the community and there's a lot of pushback. And while we know that a union will make a community and a workplace better, we don't necessarily always see, the general people outside of that situation, don't always get to see what happens if they don't win the union and how much it really takes for them to stay in the fight. And it was just, it moved me to a point where I was nearly overcome. So I go outside and I'm at this railing and I'm looking at the lake and, you know, the trees and everything. And I'm so moved. I'm near tears almost. And my director, my assistant director at the time, comes up to me and he asks if I was okay. And I said, yeah, he's like, what are you feeling? And I said, I feel like I'm coming home. It was just amazing to see we were pulling together as a community to support each other.
Uh huh.
The support wasn't going to leave these workers. They weren't going to be left on their own just because it had not been as successful as we wanted it to be. And it just gave me the feeling of not being left alone, this feeling of family, fellowship. And they were going to lock arms. We were going to lock arms to continue to make a difference and continue to fight for social justice. And that was absolutely amazing to me because it was a found family for me. It was a second family. I finally began to understand what my mother meant about being a part of the union.
Together and community.
It was amazing. One of my greatest memories.
Lauren, going back to you, what kinds of profound differences or impact do social workers make, in your opinion, in your community or a community?
So I think it's important to know that one of the things that are different from social workers than other helping professions is one piece of it that's in our code of ethics. So there are many, many important helping professions, right, that we have. We have counselors, we have psychologists, psychiatrists, different names, and all of these people that are here to help others matter and are important. But social workers have within our code of ethics the social justice component.
Mm-hmm.
That makes us very different than other helping organizations or helping professions because they don't have that social justice piece in their code of ethics that we are upheld to hold that. One particular piece, if you don't mind, Miss D, if I could read it, would that be okay?
Absolutely.
So it says that under social and political action, that social workers should act to prevent and eliminate domination of, exploitation of, and discrimination against any person, group, or class on the basis of race, ethnicity, national origin, color, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, age, marital status, political belief, religion, immigration status, or mental or physical ability. In that thing, I like to say social worker is the only profession that goes from the womb when people are receiving prenatal care
Mm-hmm.
to the tomb. And I mean that respectfully because there are hospice social workers that go back and provide counseling and support services and resources to family members who are grieving after a loved one has passed away. And then the most important part, again, is that social justice piece. That means beyond providing education, resources, information, things like that, we are always, every social worker is upheld to that code, working to make sure that anyone, there's no group of person, as you all both heard, that's left out of that.
Right.
No person left out of that,
Mhm.
that we are not supposed to be ensuring that they have the access to their rights, their dignity as a human, freedoms, and justice as a person.
Right. Just uplifting humanity. And I love that. So, kind of the same question to you, Gwen. In your community, how do you see, and this can be, like from a historical perspective, from a current where we are perspective, but I want to get to that with both of these. I know you said you still support your local unions. What kinds of things would you say are being done in your community or communities across the country that are being impacted or being improved by the labor movement, by unions?
We have to recognize, we have to acknowledge the fact that in order for the union to even be formed, it had to be a political force. By understanding that, we have to make sure that we give them their due for being a force to be reckoned with within any political arena. And that means that they had to demand better for workers and their families
Hmm.
while working with bipartisan politicians and legislators, with the goal being at the end for that legislation to benefit. Understanding that everything is in increments. So they didn't just work in the workplaces. Sometimes it takes both, and sometimes it takes both simultaneously. Campaigning for politicians who want to support workers, not just union workers, all workers.
See, that's the thing because people don't recognize that unions don't just do that work for the people in them.
Yeah.
What they do has a broader impact on all workers.
Yeah. One of the first things that they really emphasized for me was that a lot of times, while some demands may be seen like, well, why would someone need that? It was because once you establish it within these union contracts, other people who are working in whatever industry are looking and saying, well, why do they get it and we don't get it? So it raises the standards for everyone. I remember working here in Michigan with our union while we were negotiating benefits for same sex partners. Hearing these tragic stories about these people have been partners for 20 years or more, even 11 years, even 2 years, didn't matter. And then some catastrophic illness would come where this person had good insurance because they worked for the union or in a union workplace, and the other person did not, but there was no way to provide that crossover of assistance to the partner. So it was something that the UAW really stood their ground on. And not everybody was happy, but it was something that ended up changing the trajectory because it became so commonplace that everyone kind of forgot this little thing that happened in Michigan that traveled from contract to contract around the United States and made it so commonplace that now everybody was able, or most people, or some people, more people than before, were able to take part in having these type of benefits. It doesn't make sense for everyone to be unionized, but yeah, which we want as many unions in place as we can because it does raise the standards, and that's the goal, to raise the standards, build stronger communities.
Right. Sometimes a lot of people just forget the basic, like people who work don't recognize that the 40-hour work week that is the standard in our country came about because of
Because
unions.
of the union.
The labor.
Yeah. Children outside of these dangerous workplaces is because of the union. Workplace safety, where workers were dying literally every day. It was commonplace.
Mm.
I remember a labor contract that we were doing, and it was one of the Detroit Three. And one of the biggest demands, and one of the demands that they were like, we will not move on this. And it was cleaning bird feces off of the roof. You kind of looked at it and it's like, what is this? But what it was there was a lot of ventilation that, traveled down into the facility from the roof. And what they were finding was people were getting extremely ill. It was the fact that you are making people more unhealthy, which is causing people to lose time at work, which is causing people to have unnecessary health risks and injuries, which is just diminishing the morale and affecting productivity and efficiency. If you just cleaned the bird poop, you would improve it so significantly. These are the types of standards that the UAW has had to fight for in different workplaces, which sound random to other people and may not mean a lot to them, but once put in place, improves everything.
Right. When one sector of society does better, another sector or society as a whole does better. So I appreciate both of you ladies so much. I value the relationship, the friendship that we have, but I really appreciate the life work that you have been involved in and how important and essential it is really to us building healthy, thriving communities. And that's a big thing for me because I always feel that communities are made up of nothing more than individual people. They're only as good as the people that are in them and the work that they put into them. And that our country basically is a million little communities. And that when we make those communities better, we make our country better and stronger. So I love to understand and to let people know the people in our communities who are doing their part. And I love the part that you guys play in your communities in doing what you do. I know how good you are at it. I know how passionate you are at it. And we're going to start to kind of wrap up. But since it's Black History Month, I know that both of you know that we love highlighting the contributions of our African American ancestors, dead or still here with us, who have made impact in so many areas of our lives and our communities. So I'm going to start first with Lauren, and I'd like her to give us some highlights around people within the social work industry that she's aware of that have inspired her. And then we'll go to you, Gwen.
Thank you, Miss D. So there are many, many Black social workers to speak of course, because as it is with any social movement, civil rights movement, racial justice movement, women's movement, humanitarian movement, we all know, we should know that Black Americans are always at the forefront and are the trailblazers of that. So I want to just highlight two very quickly. The most significant piece of legislation ever passed in our country, which is the Social Work Reinvestment Act. It's the most comprehensive piece of federal legislation created to address the significant workforce challenges facing the profession of social work, was named after these two incredible African Americans, and that is the Dorothy Height and Whitney M. Young
Aha.
Social Work
Yes.
Reinvestment Act. And so Whitney M. Young Jr., very briefly, Whitney Young in 1961, he was a 39-year-old social worker that decided, interestingly enough, that corporate America needed to be integrated and worked very hard to and spoke out against and advocated for the fact that corporate America was all white boardrooms, all white CEOs, and that needed to change. Mr. Young was also a speaker at the March on Washington in 1963. There is video evidence of him there at the historic March of Washington in 1963. So, an amazing Black social worker. And then Dorothy Height. Many of us know that name for a lot of different reasons. But when I speak of her and what an inspiration she is to me personally, I like to share her story with social work students when we're in the classroom and speaking with upcoming social work students. And she is a pioneer. You both know of the civil rights movement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what people don't know about her is that she was also a social worker who studied at the New York University School of Social Worker, and that her entire career, what she did for work, was as a caseworker for the New York City Child Welfare Department, one of the most challenging social work positions you can have, which is to be in the child welfare part of social work, her entire career. And I'll leave with a quote of hers that is very inspiring to me personally and to our profession. And that is from Dr. Dorothy Height, who also has a Black Heritage Forever stamp from the U.S. Postal Service after her. She said, "We have to improve life, not just for those who have the most skills and those who know how to manipulate the system, but also for and with those who often have so much to give, but never get the opportunity."
Oh, thank you so much to truly amazing trailblazers that we can be thankful for the work that they did and the progress that they made for all of us, for our community, but for, I feel like, our country with the work that they established. So, Gwen, same question to you in the labor movement.
In the labor movement. It's so funny because it always strikes me as just kismet that Lauren and I have so much integration in what we have done.
Hmm.
And when she first started talking about Dorothy Height, I was like, girl, because the union and the UAW in particular loves the legacy and heritage of Dorothy Height. So I appreciate you for telling us, for sharing it with people. I know that when people think of civil rights and the union, our minds go straight to a Philip Randolph, of course, right? Of course, that's who it's going to go to because that's the story that you recognize. That's the story that you know as being the one that brought the faces of Black people in the labor movement to the forefront. But I always feel like the UAW gets cheated. So I'm going to tell you about the UAW. And I've shared this before, but I'm going to share it again. Walter Reuther and Martin Luther King Jr. were very good friends. Walter Reuther made sure that Martin Luther King had an office at the Solidarity House, which is the UAW's headquarters, for him to work out of. Because one of the things that they wanted to make sure of is prior to the March on Washington, they did a March of Freedom in Detroit. And it was the practice. They wanted to make sure that people would come. Would they come? Would they be peaceful? Could we manage it? The pre-march to Washington happened downtown Detroit,
Wow.
from Solidarity House all the way down Woodward, Shoulders Arena, and the Big Fist. Just a side note, that big fist that stands in Detroit that is so iconic that everybody sees, it actually took the place of a whipping post.
Wow.
Yes, yes, it did. There is a history there. And so that fist, it is significant. It is the grit of Detroit and how we will fight. And part of that is namely because of the UAW's large presence in Detroit, in the Detroit 3, and many other businesses around Michigan and definitely the community. So I really want to say that the civil rights movement, the March on Washington, could not have been as successful without labor unions, and definitely without Walter Reuther and the friendship that he had and respect that he had for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And that is something that I will never stop preaching about until people start recognizing it and taking it and understanding that we are not, we being union members, we being the union, are not simply out for ourselves. We are not simply out for only our membership. We are about fighting for social justice wherever we are needed. And we come to the call.
You've told me aspects of that story,
Yeah.
but every time you tell it, there's a new little jewel.
I know, right?
And I love that. And I just really, like I said, we are friends, but I love that the work that my friends do, as you said, they complement each other, they kind of intersect. And, I think it speaks to the people that you are. I am blessed to know you. I can't thank you both enough for the support that you have given me in advocacy arena and the work that I do. And I am grateful that you took a little time out to come and share with a wider audience the gifts that you bring to your community. And I just want to thank you for hanging out here with me today and helping to amplify your work and the work around your professions, the social work and the labor movement, because I do think they're such an integral part of our society, but I think sometimes people just kind of take them for granted. They do all these amazing things, and sometimes maybe people don't recognize where that work comes from. So I always like that I have these two wonderful people in my life who can help to educate people about it. And I just would like to end with both of you maybe just sharing some thoughts about your profession or about advocacy arena or whatever, just some closing thoughts to wind our conversation up today.
Well, first,
No, Lord. Nope. I'm sorry. You're going to have the last word.
okay, okay.
I cannot follow you. It's hard to follow Miss Lauren. Mm-mm. You got to close, honey, because you're the closer. I'm so sorry. But I just wanted to say that being a part of the advocacy arena and the community has been rewarding in a way that I don't think I can truly express. I came upon it during a time when I really needed it. Thank you, Miss D. Thank you for seeing something that was worthy to build this friendship and mentorship. And Lauren, you know already, I said, I'm going to be her friend. I did not care. If I had to be a stalker, I did not care. Because I felt like that was something that was kind of missing after I had to leave the workforce due to health reasons. And I needed strong women who were still advocating, still fighting in whatever capacity they could to demand democracy and freedom and justice wherever they could, whenever they could. And just being able to be in the orbit of you two. Because I love making good trouble with you ladies. And I am so grateful for you and I love you.
Thank you. So, Lauren, closing thoughts, my dear?
Well, first, I also want to make sure that everyone that watches is able to see my awesome, amazing Advocacy Arena shirt that comes from Miss D's storefront. I encourage people to support you in that way. Gwen just showed her awesome Good Trouble sweatshirt. This is my awesome Advocacy Arena shirt that I love so much. And so we hope that people will support you in that way because of all the good work that you have done for years to ensure that voices like Gwen's and like mine are not only just heard, but are amplified. That is so important during a time like now when many people's voices are being silenced or it's harder to hear people's voices. So thank you so much for what you do. I also want to thank you for always letting me share more about what it means to be a social worker, because sadly, there is a stereotype because of the media, because of movies, that all social workers do is come and take your children from your home.
Mm.
That is the narrative that is there. I even many times a month am asked and or questioned about that in regards to, is that what you do? That is the profession. And it's just simply not true. That is a very tiny, unfortunate aspect of a part of child welfare that we wish didn't occur. I wish didn't occur, and we're not going to get into that today. But the majority of my work is around social justice, where I am literally inside the North Carolina General Assembly with elected leaders working to advocate for legislation that centers equity, racial, and social justice for Black people and other people of color, where I am in there advocating to protect LGBTQ plus rights, where I am working to oppose efforts to restrict abortion access or reproductive health care. Because like I said, social workers are a little bit different because of that social justice piece. I thank you for you letting me take time here during Black History Month for us to be able to amplify social work heroes, civil rights heroes such as Whitney Young Jr. and the Honorable Dorothy Height. And as always, I am blessed beyond measure as a white woman to be able to share space during living Black history. Gwynne and you, Miss D. So thank you for this time.
Aw, thank you both so very much. I am, again, like I said, eternally grateful that I met you guys, and I really feel blessed to have you as friends. And I know that you are each going to continue, even though Gwynne, you're retired, you're still an advocate, very strong, doing so many things. And I'm always interested, and I'm always going to amplify the work that you do, because I know that it is worthy, and I know that it's very impactful, not just for yourself, but for community at large, because that's the kind of people that you are. So I just want to thank you both very much. Tune in next week when I talk to the outreach director of the Life Works Project. You'll love his childhood story involving one of the actual hidden figures. It's a very moving conversation. Think about the everyday heroes who've impacted your life. Think about becoming one yourself. This is how we build healthy, thriving communities. Thank you for listening to Connections and Conversations. This is one of many wonderful interviews that we bring to you to help connect you to a larger community of advocates and changemakers across the country. You'll get a glimpse into the various ways people are making an impact in their communities. My hope is that it will inspire you to get engaged in some small way as well. We can't all do everything, but at this moment in history, we can all do something. What are you doing? One of the things you can do is to continue to listen, subscribe, and share this Advocacy Arena podcast. You can also join and support the growing grassroots Advocacy Arena community in other ways. Join our weekly live chats hosted on Spoutable every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to our Substack to get great articles on important topics and exclusive access to extended interview conversations. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We've got some exciting programming lined up. And keep listening to our regular podcast episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, subscribe and give us that all-important 5-star review.